The Withering Veil. Secrets of the Bellhurst Sisters. In the forgotten depths of Maine's wilderness, past the reach of any map, stood a building cloaked in silence and snow, the Sanctuary of Saint Verena. For over 3 decades, it operated under the care of 3 mysterious women. More than 600 women entered through its iron gates. Fewer than half were ever seen again, and those who returned came back wrong. This wasn't a place of miracles. It was a place of mass, of lies, and something far worse. The truth has been buried in state archives for over a century, but tonight it rises. In the fall of 1798, the quiet coastal town of Bellhurst received its strangest guests. A creaking carriage rolled into the muddy square, its wooden frame sagging under the weight of locked crates and surgical supplies. From it descended 3 women who would haunt the town's legacy forever. Matron Isadora Bellhurst was the first to appear, tall, dignified, with streaks of silver through her auburn hair and eyes that seemed to know too much. Her speech was polished, her authority unquestioned. She carried herself like a queen without a crown. Then came her sister doctor, Sybil Bellhurst, pale and angular, with hands that moved like scalpels, slow, exacting, always gloved. Her presence unnerved even the bravest men. She spoke rarely, but when she did, her voice was cold and clipped, laced with the accent of distant Scottish winters. The last to descend was novice Lenora Bellhurst, barely older than 21, with raven-dark hair and hollow beauty. Her expression never changed. Her eyes followed people too long, too precisely. She had the look of someone who studied things and collected them. Claiming to be Anglican missionaries fleeing religious conflict in Europe, the sisters presented forged documents and heavy coin. With an endless supply of gold, they purchased nearly 200 acres of forest from a desperate widow and began construction of a spiritual retreat deep in the wilderness. But this was no house of prayer. The building they erected was of thick gray stone, more fortress than convent. Its tiny high windows admitted little light. Its foundations were dug deep, reinforced with iron and limestone. Doors were heavy, locked from the outside. Pipes and vents were laid beneath the earth. Too many, too wide. Locals asked why. Isadora would only say, "Silence and solitude are necessary for salvation." They hired every local craftsman to build, and each one left the project unsettled. Soon, strange women began arriving. Women labeled difficult, defiant, or unladylike. Daughters who read too much. Wives who questioned too loudly. Girls who refused to marry strangers. Families paid handsomely to have their wayward loved ones reformed. But not all came back. Then one winter night, a young trapper named Elias Crow was hunting near the retreat. He heard something unnatural, screams wet and raw, echoing through the snow. He crept toward the glow of candlelight leaking from the half-buried windows. What he saw would scar him forever. In the stone basement, under flickering lamps, a woman lay strapped to a wooden table. Her head was held in a vise. Her scalp had been cut open. Sybil worked silently over the open skull, her hands steady, her eyes unblinking. Lenora passed tools with surgical precision, and Isadora simply watched and took notes. No one spoke. No one flinched. This was not their first time. Elias fled in horror. He told his father. He told the town. But no one wanted to believe. The Bellhurst sisters were respected, generous, untouchable, until the screams returned and the woods stopped sleeping. Elias Crow did not sleep the night he fled the sanctuary. His words poured out in frantic bursts of blood, of saws, of brain exposed to candlelight. His father, a stern man with little patience for nonsense, dismissed it at first. But Elias had details, too many details. By morning, whispers stirred like frost across the town of Bellhurst. Still, most refused to listen. The Bellhurst sisters had been model citizens for 5 years. They attended church, donated to orphanages, and spoke with humility and charm at every public event. Who would dare accuse them of horror? But Elias wasn't the only one to notice strange things. The blacksmith's wife said she saw a wagon at midnight, its wheels leaving bloody tracks across the snow. The baker's apprentice spoke of hearing crying from deep in the woods. Not animal cries, but human sobs swallowed by wind. And then, one by one, letters began arriving from distant families. asking why their daughters had stopped writing. Deacon Avery, Bellhurst's most trusted elder, reluctantly agreed to investigate. He was a cautious man, loyal to the church and the town's fragile peace. He rode to the sanctuary under the pretense of organizing a charity event. Isadora welcomed him with her usual grace, offering tea and scripture in a drawing room that smelled faintly of formaldehyde and rose oil. When he asked about the rumors of screaming, Isadora smiled gently. Spiritual purification can be vocal, she said. When demons are exorcised from a soul poisoned by pride or lust, they do not leave quietly. She led him through the dormitories, silent stone corridors lined with doors. Inside, women sat motionless in prayer, too still, too silent. Their eyes followed nothing. They didn't blink. One woman sat knitting, though there was no thread between her fingers. When Avery asked about the basement, Isadora's tone changed. Some rituals require solitude, she said. Men, even holy ones, should not witness such vulnerable reckonings of the soul. He returned to town with a false sense of comfort, but something gnawed at him. The smell. It was not incense, not candle smoke. It was the metallic scent of blood and something older. Decay. He dreamed of it that night, of eyes that didn't blink, of a red river running under stone floors. Meanwhile, Elias couldn't forget what he'd seen. He returned to the woods a week later, this time armed and with a friend, John Merrick, a trapper known for his fearlessness. They found the same window, though now it was blacked out, but sound escaped still, low murmurs like chanting in a language that didn't belong in any chapel. They marked the site, and by dawn, John was gone. No footprints, no blood, just his rifle resting neatly against a tree. Elias returned to town screaming that they had taken him, but this time no one laughed. This time, the whispers became voices, and the Bellhurst sisters stopped smiling in public. Their windows remained shuttered. Smoke rose from their chimneys even in the warmest spring mornings. Some said the smoke was gray, others swore it was red. And then the disappearances began. As spring gave way to the harvest season of 1804, the forests surrounding the Sanctuary of Saint Verena began to change. The trees grew too quiet. Animals fled the region without reason. Hunters returned empty-handed, claiming they heard whispers in the underbrush. Whispers, speaking in tongues no man should know. And then came the disappearances. At first it was a farmer's wife who wandered too close to the woods after dark. Then a young school teacher who took a shortcut through the glen. A widow, a laundress. Always women, always alone. The town of Bellhurst held its breath. In desperation, Deacon Avery gathered a small council. 4 men of standing, including Elias Crow. They resolved to return to the sanctuary and see what lay beneath its stone skin. They would go not as diplomats, but as truth-seekers. On the night of the harvest moon, when the veil between worlds was said to be thinnest, they approached under cover of fog. The building loomed like a mausoleum, each stone block slick with moss and time. No light came from the windows, no sound escaped its walls, until they reached the back. There, beneath a twisted oak tree, they found a hidden cellar door, covered in vines and iron-banded. It had no lock, only a symbol carved in the center, a triangle with a slit pupil staring outward. None of them recognized it, but Elias, trembling, said, "That's what I saw," in the woman's forehead, carved in blood. They descended. What they found should not have existed. The cellar was not just a room, it was a labyrinth. Walls of stone gave way to arched tunnels lined with candle niches. The air stank of rot, sweat, and iron. In one chamber, they found rusted surgical instruments laid out like sacred relics. In another, journals bound in human skin, each one filled with diagrams of the brain and notes written in a cipher that mixed Latin with something far older. And then they found the vault, a chamber of pure stone, circular, with shackles bolted into the floor. Symbols painted in dried blood surrounded an altar made of bone-white marble. Atop it lay what was once a woman, barely breathing, her skull open like a book, her eyes wide with silent screaming. The men turned to flee, but it was too late. They were not alone. From the darkness, Sister Sybil emerged, robed in black, her gloved hands now stained crimson. Behind her, Lenora, smiling with eyes that no longer looked human. And then, Matron Isadora, holding a lantern, her face more beautiful than ever, and more monstrous. "You should not have come," she said gently. Fourth part in next video.